The night was quiet but not safe. The human man Daniel walked through the alien city with slow steps. He was only a visitor here, working at the docks for a few days. Neon lights glowed on the walls and strange creatures moved in the shadows. The city never felt friendly to humans. It was a place where secrets lived. Daniel only wanted to reach his small room at the edge of the market. But tonight he took the wrong turn. The narrow street he entered was dark and silent. Broken lamps flickered and the air smelled like smoke and metal. He felt uneasy, but he kept walking. Then he heard whispers. At first he thought it was just the wind between the walls. But no, it was voices. He stopped and leaned closer. Two tall alien figures stood under a broken sign. Their skin shimmered with strange colors and their eyes glowed faintly. They were speaking in a low, sharp language. Between them stood a young alien girl. She was smaller, her face hidden under a dark hood. She held a small metal case in her hands. Daniel's eyes widened. He saw her pass the case to the larger alien who quickly opened it. Inside lights flickered, codes, maps, something important. Daniel knew he should leave. This was not his business. But he froze, caught between fear and curiosity. His heart beat faster. His breath grew heavy. He thought he had stepped quietly, but the stone under his boot cracked. The sound echoed down the empty street. The two aliens turned their heads sharply. Their glowing eyes locked onto the shadows. The girl whipped around, pulling down her hood. Her face was young, fierce, with pale silver skin and dark green eyes that burned like fire. She saw him. Before Daniel could move, she pulled a weapon from her cloak. A blaster, sleek, glowing blue at the edges, aimed straight at his chest. Daniel raised his hand slowly. His voice cracked as he whispered, "Wait, I didn't mean to—" "Silence," the girl hissed. Her voice was sharp, cold, but trembling just slightly. "You saw too much." The other aliens moved closer, their steps heavy. Daniel felt trapped like a cornered animal. The girl's hand was steady on the blaster, but her eyes flickered with thought. For a long moment, no one spoke. Only the distant hum of the city filled the silence. Daniel swallowed hard. "I don't know what I saw." "I won't say anything, please." She narrowed her eyes. A human saw what must never be seen. That is death. Daniel felt his legs shake. His throat was dry. He thought it was over. He would die here in this dark street. But then something changed in her expression. The blaster still pointed at him, but her lips curved in the faintest smile. It was not kindness. It was something else, something dangerous. "There is one way you can live," she said softly, almost like she was testing the words. Daniel blinked. "What way?" Her eyes locked onto his. "You must marry me." The words hit him like a shock. He thought he had misheard. "What?" The two tall aliens glanced at each other, confused, but they did not interfere. The girl stepped closer, her blaster still steady. Her face was inches from his, her voice a whisper of steel. "If you are my groom, your life is tied to mine. They cannot kill you without killing me. The law will protect you. But if you refuse—" She pressed the blaster harder against his chest. "You die here." Daniel's mind spun. Marry a stranger? An alien? This was madness. But the heat of the weapon burned into his shirt and the cold truth sank in. He had no choice. His voice shook. "I don't even know your name." "You don't need to," she said. Her eyes glimmered, unreadable. "Not yet." The other aliens began to move away, melting into the shadows, leaving only the two of them in the empty street. Daniel's hand still shook in the air. The girl slowly lowered the blaster, but her stare did not soften. "From this night on," she whispered, "your life belongs to me." Daniel felt the chill run down his spine. He had only wanted to find his way home. Instead, he had walked into a trap of fate, one that tied him to a stranger with fire in her eyes and a secret too dangerous to tell. The city lights flickered again, as if the whole world had just shifted. Daniel realized his life would never be the same. And deep inside he wondered, had he just saved himself or stepped into something even worse? Daniel thought the girl was bluffing. A blaster to his chest was one thing, but marriage? That had to be a joke. He let out a shaky laugh, hoping she would lower her weapon and leave him alone, but the alien girl's expression did not change. Her green eyes burned with cold fire. She did not smile. She did not blink. "I'm serious," she whispered. "You are mine now. Refuse me and you won't live past this street." Daniel's laugh died in his throat. He looked around, searching for a way out. but the other aliens had melted back into the shadows. He was alone with her. The city was quiet, too quiet, as if the whole night was holding its breath. "Why me?" Daniel asked. His voice cracked. "You don't even know who I am." The girl's stare never wavered. She stepped closer, pressing the barrel of the blaster gently against his chest again. "You are human." "That is enough," Daniel blinked. "Enough for what?" She tilted her head slightly, studying him as if he were some strange puzzle. "Because only a human can bind the law to silence. If you are tied to me, the council cannot touch you. My enemies cannot kill you without breaking ancient vows. It is the only way to keep you alive." Daniel's breath quickened. He had stumbled into something far bigger than he could understand. His mind screamed at him to run, but his legs would not move. Her words felt like a trap, one that wrapped tighter the more he struggled. "Come," she said. Her voice was sharp, commanding. She lowered the blaster, but her eyes warned him she would raise it again if he resisted. She grabbed his wrist with surprising strength and pulled him down the narrow street. Daniel stumbled, trying to keep up. The alleys twisted like a maze, leading deeper into the alien city. Strange symbols glowed on the walls, and the air grew colder with every step. At last they reached a tall gate carved from black stone. 2 guards stood there, their armor glowing faintly in the darkness. They looked at Daniel with suspicion but did not stop her. The girl pulled him through, and the gate slammed shut behind them with a heavy thud. Inside was a temple unlike anything Daniel had ever seen. The walls were covered in silver markings that pulsed like living veins. Fires burned in bowls along the path, casting long shadows. The air smelled of incense and ash. At the center stood an altar carved from crystal, glowing softly with pale light. Daniel's stomach tightened. He felt like a prisoner walking into his own trial. "What is this place?" he whispered. "The House of Binding," she said. "Where secrets are chained by vows. Where a groom is sealed to his bride." Daniel shook his head. "No, no way. I didn't agree to this. I didn't—" "You will," she interrupted coldly, "or you will not leave alive." She dragged him to the altar where an old alien priest waited. His eyes were white and blind, but his voice carried the weight of ancient law. He raised his hands and spoke words Daniel could not understand. The sound was like stone grinding against stone. Daniel's heart raced. He turned to the girl, desperate. "You can't just force me into this. I don't even know your name." For the first time, her expression shifted. A small pause. A flicker of something, pride or maybe sadness. She leaned close, her voice low. "My name is Sarah's, remember it, human. It is now tied to yours." The priest motioned for Daniel to place his hand on the crystal altar. Daniel hesitated, shaking his head. "I can't do this." Saris raised her blaster again, pressing it to his side beneath the priest's gaze. "You can, and you will." Daniel's chest tightened. He had no choice. Slowly, with trembling fingers, he placed his hand on the cold crystal. A shock ran through his body like ice spreading through his veins. The crystal glowed brighter, pulsing with his heartbeat. The priest spoke again, louder this time, his voice echoing through the temple. The firelight flickered, shadows dancing wildly on the walls. Daniel felt as if invisible chains wrapped around him, locking him in place. His breath grew shallow. Saris placed her hand on the crystal beside his. Their skin did not touch, but the light leapt between them, binding them in strange energy. The priest's final words rang out like thunder. The temple shook, and then silence. Daniel pulled his hand back, gasping. The crystal dimmed, but the mark of the vow burned faintly on his skin. A silver band that circled his wrist like a shackle. "It is done," the priest said. His blind eyes turned toward Saris. "Your groom is bound. His life is tied to yours. If he betrays the vow, both die." Daniel's knees nearly gave out. His vision blurred with fear. This was not marriage. This was a prison. Saris turned to him, lowering her blaster at last. Her face was unreadable, her eyes still sharp as blades. "Now you live. But remember this, human. You live only because you are mine." Daniel wanted to protest, to scream, to run, but he couldn't. The silver mark on his wrist glowed faintly, reminding him of the vow he could not escape. The temple doors closed behind them with a heavy boom. Outside, the alien city waited, its secrets darker than ever. Daniel knew he was trapped in a game he did not understand. And the worst part, he had just become the unwilling groom of an alien girl with fire in her eyes and enemies in every shadow. Daniel sat on the cold stone floor of the temple, his wrist still glowing faintly with the silver mark. He stared at it, half expecting it to fade. But it didn't. It pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat, a constant reminder of the vow forced on him. He wanted to rip it off, to tear it away. But deep down he knew it was not just ink or metal. It was alive, bound to him. Sarah stood nearby, her blaster still in hand. She didn't point it at him now, but she didn't put it away either. Her sharp green eyes never left him, as if she was watching for the first sign of rebellion. Daniel's anger boiled inside, but fear kept him silent. At last he spoke. His voice was low, bitter. "So what now? Am I just your prisoner?" Her eyes flickered, and for the first time she looked away. "Not a prisoner," she said quietly. "A groom." Daniel laughed, though it was hollow. "You call this marriage? You forced me into it." "That's not marriage. That's a cage." Her hand tightened on the blaster, but she didn't raise it. She took a step closer, her cloak brushing the floor. "You think you are the only one trapped? Do you think I chose this? My enemies watch me day and night. If they learn what you saw, they will use it to destroy me. And then they will destroy you too. Binding you to me is the only way to silence them." Daniel frowned. Her words carried truth, but also danger. He studied her face, looking for cracks in her mask. She looked strong, proud, but beneath it he thought he saw something else, fear. "What were you doing out there?" Daniel asked. "What was in that case?" Her eyes snapped back to him, sharp and cold again. "Do not ask questions you cannot survive." The answer sent chills down his spine. She wasn't going to tell him. But now his curiosity burned even brighter. Whatever she was hiding, it wasn't small. It was something big enough to risk her life for. She motioned for him to stand. "Come, we cannot stay here." The temple doors opened, and Saris led him through winding passages. Guards bowed their heads as she passed, but their eyes lingered on Daniel. He felt their stares like daggers in his back. To them he was not a husband. He was an intruder, a foreigner tied to their mistress. Finally, they entered a chamber lit by pale fire. The walls were lined with weapons, blades, spears, and strange rifles that hummed with hidden power. A long table stood in the middle, maps spread across it. Daniel's eyes widened. He didn't know much about alien star charts, but even he recognized Earth's position marked in glowing red. His stomach twisted. This is a war room." Saris froze. For a moment she looked ready to strike him down for speaking, but then slowly she lowered her blaster. She walked to the table and brushed her hand across one of the maps. "Yes," she admitted. "It is." Daniel felt his pulse quicken. "So it's true. Your people are planning something against Earth." She didn't look at him. "Not my people. My father." Her voice was sharp, filled with pain. She turned to him at last, her eyes blazing. "He is a warlord. He wants conquest, not peace. He dreams of burning your world until nothing remains. And I am his daughter. That is why you cannot leave. Because now you know too much." Daniel's chest tightened. Every word sank like a stone in his stomach. He was trapped not only as a groom, but as a witness to a secret that could destroy his planet. "Then why bind me to you?" Daniel asked. "If I know the truth, won't your father kill me anyway?" She stepped closer, her cloak whispering against the floor. "Because now you are under my protection. The vow means no blade, no bullet, no law can touch you unless I allow it. My father cannot kill you without killing me, and he will not risk his bloodline." Daniel shook his head. "So I'm your shield. A pawn in your game." For the first time Sarah smiled, but it was not a kind smile. It was sharp, dangerous. Perhaps. Or perhaps more. Daniel felt heat rise in his chest. Was she toying with him? Or warning him? He could not tell. Then she leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Do not mistake this bond for safety, human. You are alive only because I will it. But if you betray me, if you speak of what you saw tonight, the vow will end us both." Her eyes locked onto his. For a heartbeat, Daniel thought she might shoot him anyway, just to end the risk. But instead she turned and left the chamber, leaving him alone with the maps of war. Daniel stared at the glowing red mark on Earth. His hands shook. He had never felt so small, so powerless. He thought about running. He thought about fighting. But then he looked at the silver mark on his wrist, glowing faintly in the firelight. He realized there was no running, no hiding. He was tied to Saris, the dangerous daughter of a warlord. And if her words were true, then his fate, and maybe Earth's fate, now rested in her hands. The chamber grew silent, but Daniel's mind screamed. He was no longer just a dock worker lost in an alien city. He was something far worse, the unwilling groom of the most dangerous bride in the galaxy. Daniel lay on the hard bed in a chamber that was now called his room. The walls were stone, carved with alien patterns, and the door was guarded by two tall soldiers who never spoke. He turned on his side, staring at the silver band around his wrist. It glowed faintly in the darkness like a chain he could never break. He replayed the night in his mind. The vow, the temple, the maps, and Ceres, the alien girl who had forced him into marriage. She was dangerous, clever, and tied to a secret big enough to threaten Earth. He should have felt only fear, but mixed in with the fear was something else. Curiosity. Her warning echoed in his head. Do not enter the chamber tonight, or you'll never come out. Daniel tried to ignore it. He closed his eyes and told himself to sleep. But the thought burned stronger. Why would she warn him? What was behind those locked doors? What truth was she hiding? Finally, he sat up. His heart pounded as he crept to the door. The guards outside shifted, but they did not look in. Daniel held his breath. He noticed a small vent near the floor, barely big enough for a man to crawl through. Maybe it was his only chance. He dropped to the ground, sliding his body through the vent. Dust clung to his skin and the stone scraped his arms. The tunnel twisted like a snake, leading downward. The air grew colder, heavier. He almost turned back, but the silver band on his wrist reminded him. He had no freedom anyway. If he wanted answers, he had to risk it. At last, the tunnel opened into a chamber lit by a strange, pale glow. Daniel pulled himself out, coughing, and looked around. His stomach clenched. The chamber was filled with weapons, not ordinary ones. These were alien machines that hummed with deadly power. Blades that shimmered like light itself. Rifles taller than a man, glowing with red energy. And in the center, a table filled with maps and strange devices. One map caught his eyes instantly. Earth again, glowing, circled in crimson. Daniel stepped closer, his hands trembling. He touched the map and symbols lit up. The alien script twisted, but some of it was clear enough. Coordinates, fleets, invasion routes. His breath quickened. This is real, he thought. They are planning war. A sound behind him made his blood freeze. Curious human, a voice said coldly. Daniel spun around. Ceres stood in the doorway, her blaster aimed at him once again. Her cloak trailed behind her, her eyes burning with fury. I told you not to enter, she said. Daniel raised his hands. I had to know. She walked closer, her steps silent but heavy with threat. Now you know too much, his heart pounded. He remembered the vow. If she killed him, she killed herself. She wouldn't risk it, right? But the way her finger rested on the blaster's trigger made him doubt. I saw the maps, Daniel said quickly. His voice shook, but he forced the words out. You're planning an attack on Earth, your father. He wants war, her eyes flashed. For a moment her mask cracked and Daniel saw pain in her face. But then it hardened again. You should have obeyed me, she said. Daniel took a step back, his voice desperate. If you wanted me silent, why marry me? Why keep me alive? You could have erased me. Ceres lowered the blaster slightly, though her eyes stayed sharp. Because you are not just a witness anymore. You are bound to me. That makes you useful. That makes you safe for now. Daniel swallowed hard. For now? What happens when your father finds out? Ceres looked away for the first time, her jaw tight. If he learns what I've done, he will destroy us both. Silence filled the chamber. The pale light flickered on the weapons, casting shadows across the floor. Daniel stared at her, searching for truth. And then he saw it, fear. Not of him, not of the vow, but of something greater. Her father. You don't want this war, Daniel said slowly. Do you? Ceres's hand trembled slightly on the blaster. She closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them again, sharp and unreadable. Do not speak of things you cannot change. Daniel stepped closer. Maybe I can change them. Her eyes widened slightly as if the thought had never crossed her mind. But then she shook her head. You are only human. You cannot stop a warlord. He pointed to the silver mark on his wrist. But I'm not just a human anymore. I'm your groom. That means I'm in this whether I want to be or not. For a long moment, neither spoke. The air felt heavy, thick with tension. Ceres's blaster lowered just a little. Her eyes softened only for a second before the steel returned. You are reckless, she whispered. Reckless men die quickly in this world. Daniel swallowed. Then you'd better keep me alive. Her lips curved, not in a smile but in something darker. Perhaps I will. or perhaps you will regret ever binding yourself to me." She turned, her cloak sweeping across the chamber, and left through the doorway. The sound of her steps faded, leaving Daniel alone with the glowing maps of Earth and the silent hum of alien weapons. Daniel's knees weakened. He sank to the floor, his mind spinning. He had come for answers and found more than he wanted. War secrets, danger at every corner. And yet a strange thought burned in his mind. Saris wasn't just dangerous. She was hiding something even greater, something she couldn't admit. He looked at the red circle around Earth and clenched his fists. The vow tied him to Saris, but it also tied him to her secret. And whatever that secret was, it could decide the fate of not only his life, but his entire planet. Daniel woke to the sound of drums. Deep, heavy beats shook the stone walls of the alien fortress. He sat up, his body stiff from the cold bed, and saw soldiers gathering outside his chamber. Their armor gleamed like molten metal, and their eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. None of them looked friendly. The door opened with a hiss, and Saris entered. She was dressed differently now. No cloak, no hood, only sleek armor marked with the symbol of her clan, sharp lines glowing green across her chest. Her blaster rested at her hip. Her presence filled the room like fire. "Come," she said simply. Daniel frowned. "Where?" "To the trials," his heart skipped. "Trials?" She looked at him with sharp eyes. "The council doubts you. They do not believe a human deserves to be bound to me. They will test you. If you fail, you die." Daniel's stomach tightened. He wanted to argue, to shout, but her cold stare silenced him. She wasn't bluffing. Guards grabbed him and pushed him into the great hall. The chamber was vast, carved from black stone and lit by flames that rose from the floor itself. At the far end sat a row of elders, their faces hidden under silver masks. Between them loomed a massive throne, empty but heavy with power. Sarah stood beside him, silent, her face unreadable. Daniel could feel every eye in the hall burning into him. He was not one of them. He was human, weak, small, and yet, because of the vow, he stood here as their groom. An elder spoke, his voice deep and cold. "The human will face the trials. If he proves himself worthy, he may remain. If he fails, the vow breaks and his blood will stain the stones." Daniel's throat went dry. He looked at Saris, but she gave no hint of comfort. Her green eyes were like glass. The first trial began. Guards brought forward a beast chained in iron. It was massive, its skin armored with plates, its jaws lined with rows of teeth that could crush stone. The elders' voices thundered, "He must survive." Daniel's knees nearly gave out. They pushed him into the arena, the beast roaring, chains snapping free. He had no weapon, no shield, only his human instincts. The creature lunged, its jaws snapping inches from his face. Daniel dove to the side, rolling across the floor. He grabbed a broken spear lying near the wall, his hands trembling. The beast charged again, its breath hot and foul. Daniel thrust the spear forward, aiming not for its armored hide but for its eyes. The weapon pierced, and the creature roared in pain. It thrashed wildly, but Daniel clung on, driving the spear deeper until the beast collapsed. Silence filled the hall. Daniel stood shaking, covered in dust and sweat, but alive. The elders nodded once. The second trial began. They placed a glowing puzzle before him, strange shapes and runes, shifting endlessly. He must solve it before the fire consumes him, an elder intoned. A circle of fire rose around Daniel, the heat pressing against his skin. He knelt before the puzzle, his mind racing. The runes twisted, but he saw patterns, angles, lines, symbols repeating. His human stubbornness kicked in. He forced his thoughts to slow, to focus, fitting piece after piece. Sweat poured down his face as the flames drew closer. At the last moment, the puzzle clicked into place, glowing with light. The fire vanished. The hall filled with murmurs. The human had passed again. The final trial was announced. A masked elder stepped forward, drawing a long blade. The groom must prove loyalty. He must bleed for her. Daniel's heart sank. The elder handed him the blade. Sarah stood before him now, her arms bare, her eyes sharp but unreadable. Daniel stared at the blade. They wanted him to cut her, to prove he had no choice but to follow their law. His hands shook. If he harmed her, he might survive the trial, but he would also bind himself deeper into this twisted game. He lowered the blade. His voice was rough but steady. "No, I won't hurt her." Gasps filled the hall. The elders leaned forward. One of them snarled, "Then you choose death?" Daniel turned the blade and cut his own palm, letting the blood drip onto the stone. "If blood is needed, take mine." The chamber fell silent. The flames flickered lower. Even the elders seemed stunned. Ceres's eyes widened. For the first time, her cold mask cracked. A flicker of something human, something almost soft, appeared in her gaze. She stepped forward, pressing her hand over his bleeding palm. The silver band on their wrists glowed together. The elder's voice thundered again. "The human has passed. The vow holds. He lives." The hall erupted in murmurs, some angry, some grudgingly respectful. Daniel stood weak but defiant, his blood staining the stones. As the guards let him out, Ceres walked beside him, silent. "At last," she whispered, just for him to hear. "You surprised them." "You surprised me." Daniel's breath shook. "I didn't do it for them. I did it because I had no other choice." She glanced at him, her eyes unreadable again. "Perhaps, or perhaps you are not as weak as I thought." The drums echoed again, louder, shaking the fortress. At the far end of the hall, the great throne was no longer empty. A figure had arrived, a towering warlord cloaked in shadows, eyes burning like fire. Ceres froze. Her lips pressed into a hard line. "My father," she whispered. Daniel's heart dropped. The trials were over, but the real danger had only just begun. The hall grew heavy with silence as the warlord stepped forward. His armor was dark, edged with glowing lines of red, and his towering frame filled the space like a storm. His eyes burned like coals, and every soldier in the chamber bowed as he approached. Only Daniel stood awkward and tense, his palm still bleeding from the trial. Ceres lowered her head but did not kneel. Her voice was steady when she spoke. "Father." The warlord's voice was deep, shaking the very air. "So, this is the human." His gaze swept over Daniel like a blade. "The one bound to you." Daniel's chest tightened. He felt smaller than ever, standing before the alien leader whose plans threatened Earth. But he forced himself not to look away. The warlord circled him slowly like a predator. "I expected a warrior, a commander. Instead, I see a fragile creature who smells of fear." Daniel's fist clenched, but he said nothing. One wrong word could kill him. "You disappoint me, Ceres," the warlord said coldly. "To bind yourself to this weak thing. What did you hope to gain?" Ceres lifted her head, her green eyes blazing. "Protection, silence. The vow keeps him alive, and through him, me. Without it, the council would strike." The warlord's expression darkened. "Perhaps, but you risk much. A human cannot hold our secrets. He cannot bear our bloodline." Before Daniel could breathe, another voice cut through the hall. "I will." A tall alien warrior stepped forward from the crowd. His armor gleamed silver, his eyes cold and proud. He bowed to the warlord, then looked at Ceres with hunger. "Let me take her, my lord. I am her equal. I am worthy. Not this human." The hall buzzed with murmurs. Daniel's stomach twisted. "A rival suitor?" The warlord's eyes narrowed. "You challenge the vow?" The warrior nodded firmly. "Yes, by ancient right I claim trial by combat. If I win, the bond breaks and Ceres is mine." Daniel's heart raced. He wanted to shout, to refuse, but the silver band on his wrist pulsed, reminding him. The vow tied him. If he refused the challenge, he would be killed for dishonor. The warlord raised his hand. "So be it. Let the combat decide." The crowd roared as guards pulled Daniel into the center of the arena. The rival warrior stepped across from him, drawing a blade that shimmered with deadly light. Daniel's hands shook. He had no weapon, no training, nothing but his will to live. Ceres stepped forward, her face tight. She whispered, "Do not lose." Daniel's voice cracked. "Easy for you to say." The warrior attacked without warning, his blade slicing through the air. Daniel dove aside, the edge grazing his arm. Pain flared, but he forced himself up. The crowd shouted, hungry for blood. The warrior struck again, powerful and fast. Daniel barely blocked with a broken staff thrown at his feet. Sparks flew as blade met wood, snapping the staff in half. Daniel stumbled, rolling across the floor. The warrior laughed, circling him like prey. "You are nothing. A human worm. You cannot protect her." Daniel's chest heaved. His mind raced. He couldn't win with strength. He had to be smarter. When the warrior lunged again, Daniel didn't block. He sidestepped, letting the blade strike the ground. Sparks flared. The warrior snarled, yanking the weapon free. Daniel grabbed a shard of broken stone and hurled it at the warrior's face. The alien flinched just for a second. Daniel charged, ramming his shoulder into the warrior's chest. The crowd gasped as the human knocked him backward. The warrior rose quickly, rage blazing in his eyes. He swung wildly, his blade slicing through the air. Daniel ducked, rolled, and grabbed the fallen spear from his earlier trial. He spun and drove the shaft into the warrior's side. The warrior staggered but didn't fall. He slashed Daniel's shoulder, blood spraying. Pain screamed through Daniel's body. He almost collapsed, but then he saw Saris. She was watching, her eyes fierce, her lips pressed tight. And for a moment, Daniel realized this fight wasn't just about survival. It was about proving he wasn't just a pawn. With a roar, he shoved forward, twisting the spear deeper. The warrior cried out, dropping his blade. Daniel ripped the weapon free and knocked him to the ground. The hall erupted in chaos as the warrior lay defeated. Daniel stood panting, blood dripping from his wounds, but alive. The warlord's eyes narrowed, unreadable. At last he raised his hand and silence fell. "The human lives," he said. His voice was heavy with displeasure, but the law was clear. "The vow remains," the crowd murmured in shock. Daniel dropped the spear, his body shaking, his vision blurring from pain. Sarah stepped forward, standing between him and the warlord. Her voice was sharp, her words echoing across the hall. "He is mine, and no one else will touch him." The warlord's eyes burned, but he did not argue. He turned and left the hall, his cloak swirling behind him. The drums pounded again, and the crowd dispersed slowly, their whispers heavy. Saris helped Daniel to his feet. Her hand was firm, steady, and for a moment almost gentle. "You should be dead," she whispered. Daniel smirked weakly. "You're welcome." For the first time, a flicker of a smile touched her lips. But it vanished quickly. Her eyes turned hard again. "This changes nothing. My father will not forgive, and you're now deeper in this war than you realize." Daniel's body ached, his blood dripping onto the stones. But his heart pounded with something new. Defiance. He had survived. And though the warlord loomed over everything, Daniel felt a strange fire inside. Was it fear, or was it the beginning of something far more dangerous? Daniel's wounds stung as he sat in the quiet chamber, his shirt torn, blood still drying on his skin. The battle with the rival warrior replayed in his mind like a nightmare. He had survived, yes, but at what cost? Every step he took tied him deeper into this alien world. And now the warlord knew his strength. That thought alone chilled him. The door opened with a whisper and Saris entered. She wore no armor now, only a simple dark robe. Her eyes studied him carefully, as if weighing every breath he took. "You should be resting," she said. Daniel let out a bitter laugh. "Hard to rest when your father is planning to burn my planet to ash." Her lips tightened. She walked closer, her cloak brushing the floor. "You speak too freely." "Because someone has to," Daniel snapped. He stood, ignoring the pain. "I saw the maps. I know what he wants. And I know you're hiding something. You don't want this war, why?" For the first time, her sharp mask cracked. Saris's green eyes flickered with something, pain, sorrow, maybe even fear. She turned away, her voice low. "Because war will destroy everything. Not just your Earth, my people too. My father doesn't care who dies as long as his name is carved into history." Daniel's heart pounded. He stepped closer. "Then stop him. You're his daughter. You have power." She shook her head. "Power? No, a chain. He watches me. The council watches me. I cannot move without eyes on me. That is why I bound you. Not only to silence you, but because I need you." The words hit him like a shock. "Need me? Why?" Saris turned back to him, her face fierce but her voice trembling. "Because you are human. You are outside the clans. You can act where I cannot. You can speak where I am silenced. The vow gave you protection, and now it must give you purpose." Daniel stared at her, stunned. "You used me." Her eyes softened just for a heartbeat. "Yes, but not only that." Before he could reply, the chamber doors thundered open. The warlord himself entered, his massive frame filling the room, his cloak trailing like a shadow. Soldiers followed, their weapons ready. He looked at Saris, then at Daniel. His voice was deep, sharp as steel. "The fleet is ready. At dawn we march on Earth." Daniel's stomach dropped. The warlord wasn't speaking in threats anymore. It was happening, no. Daniel shouted. "You can't." The warlord's burning eyes turned to him. "Silence, human. Your voice means nothing here." But Daniel stepped forward, his chest heaving, his silver-marked wrist glowing faintly in the firelight. "I am bound to your daughter. That gives me a voice. If she dies, I die. If I die, the vow breaks. You cannot ignore me. The soldiers shifted uneasily. Even the warlord paused. The vow was law, and law bound them all. Cirrus seized the moment. She raised her chin, her voice cutting through the hall. He speaks true. If you kill him, you kill me. If you silence him, you silence me. And if your war begins, it will not be only earth that burns, it will be our bloodline, our clan. The warlord snarled. You defy me? Cirrus's hand moved to her blaster, her eyes steady. If I must. The hall erupted in shouts, soldiers stepping forward. Daniel's pulse thundered. He had no weapon, no plan, only the weight of the vow and the fire in Cirrus's eyes. The warlord raised his hand, and the room fell silent. His voice was low but deadly. You think this human makes you strong, but he will be your ruin. And when the time comes, Cirrus, you will choose your blood or him. He turned and left, his soldiers following like shadows. The chamber doors closed with a heavy boom, leaving only silence. Daniel's body trembled, but Cirrus stood tall, her jaw hard. At last, she looked at him. Her voice was quiet, but her words cut deep. You wanted truth? Here it is. I never wanted war. I wanted freedom. And binding you was the only way I could fight him. Daniel swallowed hard. And now? Her eyes locked onto his, fierce and unyielding. Now, human, you are not just my groom. You are my ally, my weapon, my chance to end this before the galaxy burns. Daniel felt the silver band on his wrist pulse, alive with energy. He realized then that his life was no longer his own. He was tied to Cirrus, to her secret, to her fight, and somehow, in this strange, dangerous bond, he might be the only thing standing between Earth and destruction. The chamber grew still. Outside, drums echoed, signaling the fleet's rise. War was coming. But in the fire of Cirrus's eyes, Daniel saw something else, a spark of hope. Fragile, but real. He didn't know if he had fallen into a trap of love, or the beginning of something far more dangerous. But one truth was clear. The vow had changed everything, and the galaxy would never be the same.